Hi, I'm Fran Foster, Master of Setauket Lodge in East Bridgewater. Tonight we have a videotape produced by the Grand Lodge of Masons in Massachusetts called Courage to Lead. It is about the Scottish Rite's Freemasons.
American folk craft. Tangible element of who we are and where we've come from. Thank you. The concept of craft is important to us today. We live in an age that searches for heroes. Very often we find ourselves reaching out for a purpose to life, a direction, a set of values that will help us deal with our everyday problems in a manner that's meaningful. This is the Museum of our National Heritage in Lexington, Massachusetts. It was developed through the efforts of the northern jurisdiction of the Scottish Rite Freemasons. We're going to begin to examine the principles of another type of American craft dedicated to the question of self-directed values and to the building of a better, more humane world. Here, visitors may study the scope of American history, from its art and industry to its democratic ideals and vibrant society. Throughout the pageant of American history, Freemasonry has played an important and ongoing role. Its heroes are our nation's heroes. From our colonial founders to our frontiersmen, from our statesmen to our educators, from our philosophers to our defenders, the ranks have swelled with the names of Freemasons. Just who are the Freemasons? What's their history? How did Freemasonry become such a prominent organization in American life? And what principles from Freemasonry's past find so many applications for men of science, medicine, politics, and education today? Medieval Europe knew little certainty and less of reason. To minds feeble in judgment, lightning, floods, and pestilence belonged to Satan's legions who fought to capture men's souls. In the cities of medieval Europe and Britain, stonemasons organized guilds, associations formed for mutual support and protection in a chaotic world. Freemasonry evolved in the British Isles out of a group of highly skilled craftsmen, the builders of cathedrals. The cathedral communities were centers not only of religion, but of higher learning, before there were universities. These builders came to be known as Freemasons, setting them apart from the guild masons, the everyday workers with stone. Is it any wonder that those who spent their working lives in building temples to the greater glory of God should give rise to builders of spiritual temples in the hearts of men? Their philosophy and mission to this day is to promote the brotherhood of man under the fatherhood of God. Centuries later, Europe was a boiling stew of political, social, and economic controversy. William Hogarth, an English Freemason, captured his topsy-turvy world in sketch and painting. In Hogarth's Europe, fabulous riches mingled with dire poverty, elegance with filth. Reasonable men sought an alternative. Edmund Burke observed,
"New men will soon come in with new ideas. At this very instant, the causes productive of such a change are strongly at work."
The 18th century Freemason was the epitome of Burke's new man. The society of the medieval cathedral builders was now a moral brotherhood of men from all walks of life, men who took a delight in reform and improvement. The French philosopher, Voltaire.
"We must regard all men as brothers. Liberty is the life of the soul."
The Masonic bard of Scotland, Robert Burns.
Lay the proud usurpers low. Tyrants fall in every foe. Liberty's in every blow. Let us do or die.
The master composer, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, whose opera, The Magic Flute, was based on his strong Masonic principles. The new men of the Age of Reason, Freemasons, were bringing to the world a sense of purpose. As champions of the brotherhood of man, their ideals and moral commitment to the cause of free thought and democracy live today.
Well, yes. I'd say that the principles that have guided Freemasons through the centuries are just as alive today as they ever were. And I think the university campus is the right place for nurturing these ideals. In the past, it has been a Williams family tradition to work through the educational system to see that these values continue to provide direction for our young people.
What my dad said is true. He's been active with Illinois Wesleyan University for most of the past 25 years. My interest has been in another program which began in the mid-60s and with which I've been associated for about 7 years.
My first American family
The program is an annual student exchange begun under the Sister Cities program between our city of Bloomington, Illinois, and the city of Asahikawa, Hokkaido, Japan. In 1974, my own son Scott had an opportunity to study in Japan for a year. A year later, he knew what he wanted to do. He wanted to go back to school. He wanted to marry the young lady whom he met when he was 17 years old and whom he did marry 2 years later. The wedding was actually the first formal relationship of that nature between persons of our two cities. We have now expanded our program, however, beginning in 1976, when a group of citizens came from Asahikawa to help us celebrate the founding of our country by men who also lived by the ideals of Freemasonry.
(1760). George III of England, wishing to acquire wealth and grandeur to rival Versailles, forced his will on the American colonies.
An act for applying certain stamp duties in America towards defraying the expenses of defending, protecting, and securing the same.
To defray the charge of administration of justice, for every pound weight avoirdupois of tea, threepence.
Throughout the colonies, Masonic ideals stirred the collective conscience of our founding fathers.
This is not the season to be mealy-mouthed or to mince matters. The times are precarious and perilous.
British tyranny inflamed the hearts of patriots. From Boston to Williamsburg, Crown officials felt the wrath of free men.
Burn the book! Burn the king!
April 18th, 1775. Paul Revere, Master Mason, sped through the night, spreading his warning.
Oh, Mr. Revere, when is it?
The regulars are out. The regulars are coming down the road preparing for battle.
Where do we meet, Paul?
Meeting at Buckman Tavern.
Thank you, Deborah.
British troops were on the march, bent on suppressing revolutionary fervor. In the dark and bloody days to follow, Masons with the courage to lead took command at Lexington, Concord, and later Bunker Hill.
Could I have foreseen, no consideration upon earth should have induced me to accept this command. Still, I dare say, these men would fight very well if properly led.
And a proper leader was George Washington. Surveyor, soldier, farmer, Freemason. In a bold stroke, Washington ordered Masonic brother Henry Knox on an arduous mission. Knox and his men painfully dragged 60 English cannon from the captured fort at Ticonderoga, New York, across the Green Mountains to the heights at Dorchester. The tenacity of Knox helped Washington break the British siege of Boston.
I only regret that I have but one life to give for my country.
I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty, or give me death.
Masonic patriots continued to lead the struggle for liberty.
Something must be tried, and some risk run, rather than sit down quietly under a claim of Parliament to the right of disposing of our properties without our consent.
Philadelphia, 1787. A new nation is structured. 38 representatives to the Constitutional Congress were members of the Masonic Order.
April 1803. To Meriwether Lewis, Esquire, Captain of the 1st Regiment of Infantry of the United States of America. The object of your mission is to explore the Missouri River, which may offer practicable water communication across the continent for the purpose of commerce.
President Thomas Jefferson's letter to Freemasons Meriwether Lewis and William Clark launched a 3-year odyssey. Captain Lewis's journal recorded their trials.
We are now several hundred miles within the bosom of this wild and mountainous country, where game may rationally be expected shortly to become scarce and subsistence precarious. Every object here wears a dark and gloomy aspect. The towering and projecting rocks in many places seem ready to tumble on us.
But despite the obstacles, Lewis and Clark prevailed, guided as much by principle as by chart and compass.
We arrived at an Indian village very hungry and weary. They had heard of our medical skill and made many applications for assistance. A chief brought his wife with an abscess on her back. Captain Clark treated it with basilicum.
In 1806, the small group of explorers returned in triumph to St. Louis, the great unknown, now open. And with the opening of the western lands came a swelling tide of humanity. Immigrants with big dreams.
When improved and embellished, our great West will become the loveliest and most envied country on earth.
Oregon cannot be outdone, whether in wheat, rye, oats, strawberries, peaches, apples, or fat and healthy babies.
Despite the first flush of pioneering exuberance, westering proved to be a stern test. Graves along the Oregon Trail left a record of bitter frustration and many a shattered dream. But Americans pushed on. Settlements took root. Homesteaders, cattle ranchers, and farmers prospered. Towns grew, and great dreams took shape.
Good evening, brethren. Welcome to Fayette Lodge. Brother Marshall, you will attend the Great Lights.
Years before, Eastern lodges had provided a solid foundation of Masonic principles, which gave direction and guidance to those who were to move west with the wagons. It's been said, in fact, that a church, a school, and a Masonic lodge were the first 3 buildings to be erected in many a frontier town. May 10th, 1869, Promontory Point, Utah. The driving of the Golden Spike linked our nation from shore to shore. Ribbons of steel now spanned the territory, which but a half-century before was the trackless wilderness opened by Meriwether Lewis and William Clark. Today in America, exploration is still taking place in every field of endeavor.
Don't move your head, Mary. Keep your eyes right on the target and follow it only with your eyes. Follow it as carefully as you can and don't move your head.
At McLean Hospital in Belmont, Massachusetts, Harvard University's Dr. Philip Holzman.
Among the exciting new developments in medical science today are studies of the biology and psychophysiology of major disorders like schizophrenia. Our work is directed towards uncovering those risk factors that may predispose people to schizophrenia.
Dr. Holzman's work is funded through the Scottish Rite Northern Jurisdiction Benevolent Foundation.
A few years ago, we began our studies seeking some biological indications of schizophrenia. In our search, we discovered that schizophrenics have trouble following moving objects smoothly. If we knew how such biological markers work, we will be able to understand how experiences interact with the organism to produce that condition that we call schizophrenia.
Tom, we're going to be interested in dissecting this area here called the putamen, which is high in dopamine concentration.
At McLean Hospital, other schizophrenia studies are also funded by the Scottish Rite. Dr. Edward Bird heads one such program.
Medical technology allows us now to cross another frontier in the study of mental disease. We're able to freeze the brain of a deceased schizophrenic patient and study the neurochemical substances in that brain.
This peak represents dopamine. This substance has been the focus of many studies supported by the Scottish Rite program because it has been thought to be crucially involved in the action of antipsychotic drugs. And now research is moving into a new phase in which the focus is on understanding the mechanism of dopamine action in the brain of schizophrenic patients directly. This program of studies is directed by Dr. Robert Felix, and it represents one of the main components of schizophrenia research in the world today.
Well, that's right. In 1934, the Scottish Rite, quietly and without fanfare, undertook the funding of research by professionals who would be unable to carry on their work without this kind of support. Before the Scottish Rite's involvement, research into schizophrenia had been a pursuit talked about in hushed tones, an area that was not highly visible and certainly not popular. Since that time, funding has been provided to hundreds of researchers here and abroad, including a recent Nobel Prize winner. For seeking light is one of the great goals of Freemasonry.
The courage of men who daily perform services to our community in the light of constant danger has always been an inspiration to me. For 25 years, members of Blue Coats Incorporated have given generously to those who have actually lost their lives in the performance of their duties.
The Masonic sense of service can find no finer proponent today than Dr. Lewis Raymond, pastor of the Old Stone Church of Cleveland.
He has smoke inhalation, which means he has extensive pneumonia. His burns are critical, which makes a prognosis very grave.
Well, Dr. Wilder, God bless you.
Okay.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate everything you've done. I really do. God bless you.
Well, the Blue Coats is an organization that was founded some 25 years ago. And in the case of a fireman or a policeman's death, we then go to the family and we present them with a check for $1,000. And then we come in and the mortgage is paid off. We work with the young people of the family. If they desire to go to school, their tuition is paid for collegiate education. Now, of course, you can see that this would be a very handsome gesture. Not that it would ever compensate for the loss of a person's life, but this is our way of saying thank you for the sacrifice to those who carry on.
No one-dimensional individual is Dr. Raymond. In the Masonic tradition of leadership, he spreads his message of light and hope to an entire region.
You know, before I went into the ministry, I was a commercial fisherman for years. And as a pastor and a counselor, I've learned that finding our way through life is a lot like setting a course and being able to keep it true. Of course, we're all going to get caught in storms along the way, but What the storms teach us, I think, is the craft of honing our faith, of living by a set of rules or the charts of life, which provide us with a sense of the responsibility to ourselves and of our service to our fellow man. It's no wonder that by following the course markers of the great Masonic principles that so many of our great leaders have come to us through Freemasonry. You know, one such leader, and one who loved nature as much as I do, by the way, was President Theodore Roosevelt. After visiting Yosemite with naturalist John Muir, TR spoke to the people of Sacramento.
Lying out at night under those grand sequoias was like lying in a temple built by no hand of man, a temple grander than any human architect could build. I ask that your marvelous natural resources be handed on, unimpaired.
The harmony between a temple created by nature and God's temple created by the medieval Freemason come together for us in Roosevelt's speech. Nature's reasoned order and the controlled, fundamental reason of mankind, two tenets of Freemasonry, had, by the 20th century, nurtured men the world over, and would continue to do so. Here, in the art glass window of the Museum of our National Heritage, our story is, in one sense, complete. And yet, is the story of Freemasonry's principles, values, and life-enriching direction ever really complete? What are the principles that we Americans choose to live by today going to mean to this young man and his future? What will be the commitment, the moral fiber that we, as guardians of a proud past, must pass on to future generations? Freemasonry has given us a foundation, a purpose, a bedrock of faith in practical application. It's an institution and a brotherhood that will continue to nourish us in all of our tomorrows, if we have the courage to lead.
Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for future shows at the same time on the same channel. Once again, thank you.